And welcome back on to the 9th of Feb. It is the higher plus 5 a day, and let's go with the first question. Okay, so we have a histogram. It says the histogram shows the weights of 700 dogs. Now, this is going to be one of two types of questions. Either it's going to be a case of if I add up what I think the frequencies are, I'm going to get 700, or I'm going to have to scale my frequencies. And the second one is going to be very annoying. So let's just hope. So the first thing I'm going to do is work out the areas of each of these little bars here. So for example, this bar here is 2 across and it goes up. Each square is 4, so it goes up 14. So 2 times 14 is 28. And then do that for each of these bars quickly so you can see what I'm doing. So I've got 2 times 50, well that's easier, so that's 100. I've got 2 times 90, which is going to give me 180. I've got 4, because this bar is slightly wider, so I've got 4 times, just get rid of that, there we go, 4 times 50, again, hopefully an easier number, which is 200. And in the big one on the right, well, it's 18 up to 26, so that goes across by 8, and it's going up by 24. 8 times 24 is equal to 192. Okay, let's just add these up and hope. I can see the 28 and 192, so that should hope. So 192 plus 28 plus 100 plus 180 plus 200 does indeed give me 700, which is great, because that means I don't need to do any scaling of the frequency density, which is a question I've seen before, and that would make it a lot more difficult. Right, what do we have? Find an estimate of the percentage of dogs that weigh over 20 kilograms. So in other words, 20 kilograms is here. And so I need, well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 squares across, or 4 big squares. So I need 3/4 of those 4 squares. So it's going to be 3/4 times 192, which is going to give me 192 times 0.75. It's going to give me 144. So the first one is 144. What am I weighing? Dogs. Excellent. Next question. Calculate an estimate of the median. I have 700 dogs. So my median dog is a 350th. So what I need to do is work out which bar that dog lies in. So if I do a cumulative frequency, I'm going to do it like this. So I start here and this goes up to 28. So in other words, there's 28 in the first bar. Then the second bar goes from 28 to 128. Then the third bar goes from 128 to 308. And it's going to be the next bar, isn't it? And the next bar goes from 308 to 508. So in other words, my median dog is going to be within this bar here. Now, you may have seen me to do this calculation before in earlier days. What I need to do is I need to go from 350, where I'm starting from 308. So in other words, I need to go 42 across. The overall width, as in the frequency of that bar, is 200. So I need to go 200 over. And then I need to multiply that by the change in the bar. So the bar goes from 14 to 18. So in other words, the bar goes up 4. I need to add on the initial 14. So this is the amount I'm adding on, and this is my starting point. And if I get my calculator out, so I do this carefully, so 350 minus 308, divide all that by 200, times that by 4, and then add 14, and I get 14.84 kilograms. Now, quick sanity check. Kind of in your head, do like a little bit of a seesaw. Where does a fulcrum go? Does a fulcrum go here on my seesaw if I'm trying to weigh all the bars? It kind of does, doesn't it? It looks like it's about in the middle. So the point is, this feels like a reasonable number. So that's what we're going to go with. Next question. The number of bacteria on a Petri dish is modelled every hour. Right, hour could be important because I might change my time horizon, and is modelled by the formula below, bacteria and number of hours. At the beginning of the experiment, show that A equals 80. So in other words, at the beginning of the experiment, T is equal to 0, which means the number of bacteria which we are told at 80 is equal to A times anything to the power of 0 is 1, which means that A is going to be equal to 80. So it's quite difficult to know exactly how to show this. So I'd probably actually in the exam be tempted to write something like 2.71 to the 0 is equal to 1, just to make it really obvious that I know what I'm doing. Next question. How many hours would it take for there to be at least 200 bacteria? So in other words, this is a growing from 80, and so I want to find out the number. Actually, I know A is 80 now, don't I? So I want to find out the number of t, let's write this down first, so t times 0.2t, that's going to give me a number above 200. Now, there is a way of doing this. You'll learn to do this at A level, but the way you have to do it at GCSE is basically just trying different numbers. So I'm going to try 4 hours, and I'm going to try 5 hours, partly because I think what the answer is, but let's give it a go. So if I do 200, so 80 times 2.71 to the power of 0.2 times 4, well, that's going to give me 177.6. So that gives me 177.6. Now, if I replace, it depends which calculator you've got, but if I replace the 2 with a 4 with a 5, that gives me 216.8 bacteria. In other words, I need to get to 5 hours in order to get the above 200 bacteria. So my answer is 5 hours. Now, again, you will learn a way of solving those equations at A level, but for now, you don't know how to do it. Next question. How many bacteria would there be after 1 day? Okay, so this is what I mean. So they've switched time zones. So in other words, 1 day is 24 hours. So my T is 24. So I'm going to do A, which I know is 80, times 2.71 times to the power of 0.2 times 24. I'll put all that in my calculator carefully. There's a lot of calculator in this exam today, isn't there? So 2.71 to the power of 0.2 times 24. And that's going to give me 9579.494, blah, 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 494, etc. So I would write the calculator answer, and then I would say it's approximately 9580 bacteria to 3 sig fig. Full answer with my working, and you can see my rounding as well. Obviously, if the question says round to the nearest, do that. If the question says to the nearest whole bacteria, then you would do that one instead. Next and final question today. Here's a triangular prism. Okay, it's going to be a 3D trig question, isn't it? Which angle is larger, ACE or ADE? Well, ACE is the one that's nice and against the wall here. So ACE, I'm going to call this angle theta. And ADE, which I'm going to do in a different colour so it's slightly more readable. So ADE comes down here and goes across here. And it's really hard to see on this diagram, but it's a more shallow angle because it's kind of going up the slope. And so therefore I'll call this angle phi. Now it must be the case, and again, think about going down a ski slope. When you go down a ski slope, if you've ever done skiing, you do this thing where you, especially when you're learning, where you sort of go from side to side. And the reason you're doing that is you're making the slope more shallow. And it's the same idea here. It's taking me longer to travel up the green line than it is up the red line. So therefore it must be the case that the theta, so ACE, so it must be the case, I should go back to my pen. So it must be the case that ACE is greater, angle ACE is greater than angle ADE. Now, does it actually want me to work it out? Probably it does, but in fact, actually, let's just do it. Well, what I'll do is I will work it out. You can sort of skip this part of the video, or if 3D trig is something you like to practice, you can sort of go through with me. But question itself, I think I've answered the question. I've done it. It didn't say explain it. I'm happy AC is the answer. Let's now prove it. So to work out angle ACE, well, actually, that's not too bad at all, is it? Because ACE, he says, just writing it down quickly. So ACE is going to be this angle here. Now I know my hypotenuse is 40 and I know my adjacent is 30, so I'm making this smaller than I should do, but notably angle ACE is equal to cos minus 1 of adjacent over hypotenuse, which is 30 over 40 or 3 over 4, which is approximately, calculator again today, so 3 over 4, which is 41.4 degrees. So my angle ACE is 41.4 degrees. Now I don't need to be too accurate here because I know there's going to be quite a difference, and we are showing it to be true. Now, angle ADE. So I always kind of work step by step. So I want triangle ADE, where A's at the top, D's down, D's here, and E's at the bottom underneath. I'm going to need two sides because I need two sides to do an angle. And I don't know any sides, do I? It's going to be a bit annoying. Okay, right. So in order to do that, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do side A to E. I'm going to do it up here. There's not a lot of space, so I'm sorry for squishing this in. And I'm also going to move this down here slightly because that's the answer I'm going with. Okay, right. So using Pythagoras, a to e is going to be 40 squared, which is the hypotenuse, minus, in this case, the adjacent, so 30 squared, square rooted. I'm going to calculate it again. So that's going to be 40 squared minus 30 squared, which is going to be, it says 10 root 7. Press the button, that's going to give me 26.5. That will do, because this is an approximate calculation. So I've got a to e, so I now know that a to e is 26.5. I then either need a to d, which I could do, or I could do d to e. D to e probably is the way that most people are going to go. So in order to get d to e, I'm going to consider the triangle e to f. Let's write that on. So this is a triangle on the floor, so e to f to d. And I know e to f is 35, and I know f to d is 30. So this means Pythagoras again, so I'm going to add them together. I'll just write this down so you can see what I'm doing. So that's going to be 35 squared plus 30 squared square rooted, which is going to be 35 squared plus 30 squared square rooted. It says 5 root 85 in my calculator. I'm going to call that 46.1. And now I've got there, finally, haven't I? So I've got my d to e, I've got my a to e, and so that means the angle I'm looking for, which I've called the green angle phi, is going to be, well, this is tan minus 1. So angle ADE is going to be tan minus 1 of opposite 26.5 divided by the adjacent, which is the one I've just worked out as 46.1. And that's going to give me tan minus 1, 26.5 divided by 46.1. Now, before I press equals, I'm hoping this number is below 41.4, and it is 29.9, thankfully. So 29.9 degrees. I'm pretty sure I've done all that okay. Now, in an exam, it would do a much better job of making it very clear whether it wants you to calculate it or not. I've gone with the safer method. It doesn't. It's just a textbook type question. I've explained it, and in the second method, I've done the maths to show it to be true. But either way, we got there. What a sort of tough end to a question. That today was actually going okay. Nice mix of questions, but really tough one at the end. So well done if you got those. Usual thing, like, subscribe, and I'll see you for tomorrow's set of questions. Thanks all.